So welcome back to the February Intermediate Saturday Sampler here at Close to Home in Southington location. The February kits will be available beginning Friday, February 10th. So bring your completed January intermediate block in before February 28th to receive this February kit free. All right. Don't forget, we have a Super Bowl sale in effect right now through Sunday at 4 o'clock, February 12th. 33% off most items. So we hope to see you. So this month, in February, we're going to go over two rulers. The Cat's Cradle by Creative Grid. We've done this in the past. It creates blocks that have a lot of triangles, but absolutely you are cutting just rectangles and squares. So it's a nice way to get this look without worrying about that 45-degree and meeting up with the points. All right, so we'll go over that real quick. And these are 4-inch finished. And then the second block we're going to do is a diamond Rex. Looks just like this, except one side is brown and one side is cream. Okay, and I'll show you how to get the two-sided effect on that. It has 3 areas in the ruler. One is this diamond shape that you're cutting. So for us, we're doing the 2x4. So here is the diamond piece that we're cutting on the ruler. And when I cut my strip, I'll show you again. The second portion is how to cut these rectangles, and that is in this position. And then finally, how to trim up each of those diamond shapes into a rectangle. So 3 separate portions that we'll be going over. So come on over, take a look at the block. So these are 4-inch finished units. This is the Cat's Cradle. It's in every corner. And then we have our north, south, east, west blocks with a 2x4 diamond Rex with a rectangle sewn to it to finish at a 4-inch finish. And then in the center we have a very simple pinwheel, again finishing at 4 inches. So to cutting, I only put a few of them down because they were a little bit confusing. The cream. So let's go over the cream real quick. You're going to get a nice big rectangle of the cream fabric. So the first one you're going to do is cut a 3 3/4 strip. Out of that 3 3/4 strip, you're going to get 4 rectangles that are 2 3/4. Then you're going to cut that down to 3 inches. I didn't note it here, but it's 3 inches from here to here. And each of those rectangles is going to be 3 inches by 2 1/4. So you'll have a little extra at that point you can throw away. The next long strip you're going to get from that cream rectangle is going to be cut at 2 7/8. You'll get 2 squares at 2 7/8. Then you're going to cut what's remaining down to 2 1/2 to get 4 2 1/2-inch squares. And again, a little extra to trim away. These 2 7/8, you're going to draw one single diagonal line. That is for the pinwheels. Okay. And the other one was the multi-dot. You're going to cut the strip 2 7/8. And you're going to first cut 2 squares that are 2 7/8, again for the pinwheels. It's the multi-dot and also the cream for the center. The rest of that strip is for the diamonds shapes, and that is cut at 2 1/2. You ready to get started? All right, so I've gone ahead and cut out my kit, always using Mary Ellen's Best Press. It really does help stabilize your fabrics so that they don't fray as quickly and the pieces don't get pushed into the sewing machine as easy. So my pinwheels, which I've already done my 2 7/8, I'm not going to do a pinwheel, but you are putting right sides together, making half square triangles. You're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side, cut on the line. And again, right sides together, do it twice, and you're going to follow the directions on your handouts to make your pinwheel. All right, so the cat's cradle. So once again, the cat's cradle, you make 2 cat's cradle units at one time with these measurements. And you can make them anywhere from a finished cat's cradle 1.5 all the way down to 4. So in February's block, we are looking at the 4-inch finish. So all the measurements that I gave you to cut are right here. All right. So the first cut 2 at 2 3/4, we have to cut 4, and that's our turquoise. The second unit that we're cutting is our cream. We'll look all the way down, 2 3/4 by 3 3/4, and that is our cream fabrics. And then the last one, we just need 1 piece, 5 by 6, and that is our purple. So of course, because I'm making 4 cat's cradles, I need to double the units. All right. And because I am doing a split corner, not this one, but we're using this split corner, and that's going to be a cream piece, which I have marked on the diagonal. So let's get started. So we're going to sew a turquoise to our cream. Again, doesn't matter what side, but I need 2 of them because I want to show you how to make a complete block. So we'll take a few minutes and make a cat's cradle. We're just going to sew this at 1/4 inch, and we're going to press it to the rectangle. So let's go press to the rectangle. So if I'm pressing to the rectangle side up, just a little heat, and I'm just gonna roll that right onto the rectangle. All right. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take these 2 units with opposite squares in each corner, and we're gonna sew those at 1/4 inch. Okay. Should be the same size. So match it at this end. Make sure you don't flip your seam allowances that you just pressed. All right, now we need to press this again towards the rectangle. So if I'm pressing this toward the rectangle and this toward the rectangle, I get a little twist. So we need to take a little snip in there, and we're pretty familiar with that when we do our flying geese units with the Eleanor Burns Quilt in a Day. So basically just a little snip into the seam allowance, and we're going to go ahead and press these again toward the rectangle and toward the rectangle. Then we're going to use our ruler to mark our sewing line. All right. So we have this. We're going to go to the ruler, get the heat off of it because I'm using and on the ruler, you see where it says mark sewing line. And right here it says place on seam line. So this mark, this solid mark, is going right into the solid mark of my seam line. I know, I'm sorry I used white thread. It's very hard to see. So this corner is going to get laid right into here. And notice there's no seam allowance. This is the marking line. This is the sewing line. So wherever you mark that line, you don't want to mark it up too high because you'll cut off your point. You want to make sure it's right there in that, right on top of that seam line. And this should pretty much line up. okay? But I would go by that solid line. One corner is going to come out to a corner. It's going to intersect right there at that point. So here is my seam, and you see my line is right there at the point. So we're going to do it on both sides. Place that on the seam line, draw my line, and then I'm going to get the purple fabric. And it comes pretty close out to this one corner. Okay. So we're going to put right sides together. We're going to layer this with one of the purple 5x6s. It should be the same size. And we're going to go ahead and sew on those lines. Okay, so let's start. And it's going to intersect right where I wanted it to, right at the point of that square. Okay, and you'll be doing this twice, right? Because you have to make 4 units. And here we go again. So right on that line, right across that little intersection. All right. So now we're going to use our tool one more time. This time on the tool, it looks like these two sides have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance already made, showing for you. So what I like to do is to take this sewn line that we just drew and sewed on and place that solid line on that seam line, and I can go ahead and cut my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I hope that makes sense. So now I have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance from my block. I'll turn this around, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Where my sewn line is, where I drew with my friction pen, I'm going to place the solid line, and I'm going to trim that down to a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You could really use any ruler, but I'm using this ruler because it's right here and it's handy. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press this open, and again I'm going to press this toward the purple or the larger triangle. So let me go ahead and do that. Be right back. All right, so we see where we sewed, where I drew that line and sewed right on that line, I did not cut my point off on my square. All right, so now we're going to use this tool. One more place on this tool, and this is to trim to size. So you'll notice the very last one, each one of these correlates to each one of these, but I am a finished 4-inch, so I'm looking at the very, very last solid line. And I'm going to put that solid line right on my turquoise seam, and the very last dashed line right along my seam allowance here. So if you can just follow this, I'll push it up a little. So my 4-inch has to come right to that point, so it's sitting right on the turquoise square, and my dashed line is right across my purple and cream. That's off a little. Sorry. Oh well. Not yet. Next time. So it's important to get this line straight across because we're going to use that last one. So now when we spin this around, this is where we're going to use this line to come all the way down to intersect the point down here. So I'm going to slide this down. That point that I just used on that solid line is just barely touching the turquoise point. And that dash line is still going across my purple and cream seam. And now I have one more dash line to look at that it's intersecting right down here. So on the 4, right where it touches, and I can go ahead and trim the other 2 sides. Good question. Okay, so now it's just a matter, This is a cat's cradle unit that measures 4.5, finished at 4. So the last thing we're going to do is take one of these cream 2.5, and we're going to place it in the turquoise area, and we're going to sew on the line, and we're going to trim away the excess corner, and we're going to just press this right into place. All right? Sounds like a plan. Next, diamond Rex. Sweet. So I've cut my 2.5-inch strip. So on the diamond Rex ruler, every diamond starts with, if I was making a 1x2 diamond, it would start with a 1.5 wide strip. If I'm making the 2x4, which is what I'm making in February, and it's also in my border around the intermediate block of the months blocks, I start with either a 2 3/8 or a 2.5. So I start with a 2.5 because I like to trim it down a little bit. If I was making it bigger, it would just tell me what size strip to start with. All right, so this was the remainder of my multi that was left over from my 2 7/8 pinwheel pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and place the diamonds. Here it is. This little strip right here goes, here's the bottom of my strip, and here's the top of my strip, but it's going to be a little bit bigger. So really, I'm just lining it up with this one. So you see the diamond shape here. I want this point to be on my fabric, just like that one. I can push it up just a little bit, but you see how the bottom of my strip is right along that diamond, and this line coming up here is definitely has enough room. So I'm going to trim and trim. The first one's a little tricky, but you'll figure. Watch the video a couple times. So I'm going to trim this one, and I'm going to trim this one. And then this piece gets turned 180 degrees so that I can trim this side. So I'm just going to pull this away, flip this around, and replace it back into the line of my diamond. You see? So the bottom of my strip is right here along the line of my ruler. That line that I just cut is right here. It's right up perfect at the top because I trimmed away the excess, and I'm going to make my first diamond. So now everything else is going to be in the same direction. I'll just slide this down. I'm going to put this right into the bottom and the edge, and I have 2 sides to trim. The first side is to make a diamond, and the second is to trim down the 2.5. All right, move it over. I line up the bottom and that cut edge. Go ahead, cut one side and trim the 2.5 down. And one more, just because. All right, along the bottom, along the cut, I have another angle and another trim. So I have my 4 diamonds ready to roll. All right, so let's work on the Rex. Those were easy. So the Rex are the pieces that go along the sides here on the ruler. You have a left and a right, or a left and a right, depends which way you're looking. And one side is going to be the cream, and one side is going to be the brown. So you need a right side up and a right side down. So right sides facing each other to make 2 of these. All right, and I'll show you. So we're going to place our rectangle on the ruler where it says 2x4 finished, and here's my lines. You see this solid line here and the solid line going up. I'm just going to place that right into the corner, and I'm going to trim my rectangle pair in half. Okay. So now when I open it, this side I have both a left and a right. A left and a right. Do you see that? And when I open this side, I also have a left and a right. And I'll do the same with this pair, right sides together, and trim that one using the ruler. Same with the brown. While I'm here, I'm going to put these two right sides together. I'm going to get out my Diamond Rex ruler, go to the rectangles, look for 2x4, and this is the exact same size I told you to cut, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this one. So now I have a pair of the brown, one to the left and one to the right. Same on this one, one to the left and one to the right. So how do we sew these? So we're going to sew these with the diamond on top. So I'm going to sew the cream side first. And when I place my diamond, I'm not just going to center it, but I'm actually going to push this point up to the wide side a little bit. So yes, this does hang off more, and this is about 1/8 of an inch or so. And I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch. So it's not really centered. I find I get a little bit easier to trim when this is up a little bit. So somewhere between 1/8 is good, somewhere in the 1/8. So let's bring that over. Let me line it up real quick again, because things do shift in the air. And a diamond gets sewn on top. So all I have to do is turn this around, and I'm just going to sew my 1/4 of an inch. All right. So we're going to press this toward the rectangle. So if I'm pressing it toward the rectangle side is up, and I'm just going to give this a press. Let me press that real quick. And we're going to do the other cream side. So here we are. The diamond goes on top of the Rex. So this is the seams that I'm going to be sewing together. When I get this together, I look at the wide side, and the point of this is about 1/8 of an inch away. And I still need to follow both pieces right on top of each other. So here we are, about 1/8 of an inch or so. All right, and we're going to sew this 1/4 of an inch. It might or it might not come out there, depends, but don't worry, because we're going to trim this. All right. So here's the next one. Diamond side up. Ooh, 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 ooh. Get your edges right on the edge of each other. You don't want one wider than the other. Sew that at 1/4, and again, we're going to press toward the rectangle this way. All right, let me give that a little bit of heat, and I'll just add the brown ones real quick. Diamond point versus the brown point. Okay, and we'll sew 1/4 of an inch. So with the diamond on top, and press to the rectangle. Okay, one more to go. So here's my last piece, diamond on top. I'm looking at the point of my diamond. It's very close up to the top, keeping my edges together. And again, sew 1/4 of an inch with the diamond on top. Excuse me. Okay. Once I get this pressed, we just go to our tool one more time, put it in the spot where it goes, line it up, and trim it. So we'll go ahead and press this. Now, to make the borders that I suggested, you're going to need 144 of these. So I hope you like them. They're really super easy. Okay, so the last piece of this diamond Rex is this location over here, and this is our trimming spot. So I am looking for the 2x4, which is right here. No, right here, sorry. And I'm going to place the 2x4, finishing at 2.5 by 4.5. All these X marks the spots are going right in the intersection, and my dashed line of the diamond is going right in my multi, right between the multi and the other color. Okay, so it's very close here, but you can see I do have enough all the way around to trim. So I'm just going to hold this nice and tight to trim. There's no grippers. You can always put gripper on it, gripper dots or Invisi Grip or something like that. So I cut my two sides. I'll go ahead, turn this 180 degrees, line up my corner, line up my little arrows, or X's I should say, and I can go ahead and trim this. So now I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance around every single edge of my diamond. Excuse me. There we go. So you're going to make 4 of those, and then when we're done with those, we're just going to sew on the blue to the cream side at 1/4 inch to make our 4.5 inch piece, or 4 inch finished. All right. So that's pretty much it. Come with your rows sewn together to pick up your March kit free. All right. If you have any questions, of course, you can stop in the store. We'd be happy to help you. And don't forget that Super Bowl sale now until 4 o'clock Sunday, February 12th. Thank you for watching.